Hi, I'm Roy Ackland. Behind me is the Atchafalaya River Basin. This is Cajun, Louisiana, full of fine French-speaking folks who like to sing and dance and eat good food. In the next 30 minutes, you're going to meet lots of Roy's Cajun folks. The Cajun country of Louisiana is remote and swampy. Located in and around the Atchafalaya River Basin, it's a land of misty mystery and exotic birds, fish, and other critters. The Cajun people were expelled from eastern Canada in the mid to late 1700s for their religious beliefs. They settled here in the swamps because it was isolated, and they could live off the land by fishing and hunting. But eventually, modern highways penetrated the swamps, and they were persecuted again, but for another reason.
When we went to school, somehow somebody had decided, the school system essentially, that if these kids were going to learn to be regular old students and Americans, they needed to speak English. And we all spoke French on the school ground, and there was pretty severe punishment for speaking French. The people here were made to feel that speaking French and being Cajun and was a kind of a second-class kind of existence. So if you get people to believe that, they'll drop a lot of their traditions and language. Nobody wants to be thought of as second class. So in one generation, the French language was gone.
But today, finally, the Cajun way of life is being recognized. The Cajun French is being taught again, and the Cajun joie de vivre, or zest for life, is celebrated regularly in dance and song, demonstrating the energy that has kept them going.
Cajuns genuinely do, most of them, have this joy in living that most other Americans, I don't see it at such a high level.
So once more, the residents of the Atchafalaya Basin are allowed to be themselves. It's cool to be Cajun. The fun-loving residents of a land that's at first intimidating to the outsider. But as one becomes more familiar with the swamp, its beauty and bounty become apparent. And it became apparent to me that it's full of Roy's folks. The Atchafalaya is not the kind of river that cuts through the land, but it rests gently on South Louisiana, wide and swampy and full of life, a photographer's dream. Photographer Greg Guirard knows that to catch the daylight at its best, you've got to get there before it does. Darkness displays a black and white world, but the dim light of morning just might hold what Greg's looking for.
I'm looking for something that's a picture that says something, either that creates a feeling of peace and beauty, or that says something about the people, about the culture that exists in this environment. Good. Got it.
You can tell by the ease of his movement and the hush of his voice that this is home to Greg.
That's good right in there. The only place I don't feel out of place, where I feel really at home, is in the Atchafalaya Basin itself, out in the swamp. I feel at ease and peaceful in the Atchafalaya Basin.
Greg's published a few books in his time, of course, about his people and their land. Some would call him Renaissance man, artist, but not Greg.
I very much dislike being called an artist. You know, people say, oh, you're a real artist. For me, photography is too easy. I'm recording what I see.
In one of his books, he quotes Thoreau in an attempt to describe the way he feels about who he is.
I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived.
Greg's favorite photographs are of the great cypress trees. They look big to us, but they're mostly the hollow victims of lightning strikes, not good enough for the logger's axe. Just look between these trees and you will see the reminders of what used to be. Rotting stumps, the only testimony to what once was a great forest of trees, reaching 100 feet and more into the sky. True giants, but now all gone. Not a single one left.
It happened almost suddenly. All the trees were gone, and people said, well, what happened? No more lumber, no more jobs, no more trees. It's like the people themselves converted their homeland, beautiful wilderness, into cut over swampland, and before they realized what they had lost.
Greg's grandfather was one of those Cajuns who lived off the land, its wildlife, and its trees.
When we moved out here, I was 2 years old, and my grandfather had bought 1,300 acres of land in this, all together here. We live right next to the Atchafalaya Basin swamp, and in order to pay for the land, he set up a big sawmill right almost where we are, and began sawing up the trees into lumber.
Before long, cypress, oaks, everything was gone, and the forest was farmland. This is what most of the farmland looks like around here. It's planted in sugarcane, but what Greg's doing is planting it back in trees.
That should take it. Where'd I put my potting saw? My topsoil. If I'm planting in water, I don't use any potting soil. If I'm planting in ground like this, the soil is so heavy with clay that it won't crumble around the roots.
So how many trees do you plant?
I've planted about 30,000 trees now. I've been doing it for about 16 years, I guess. And I've planted about 18 or 20 different varieties.
One of those varieties is live oak. Greg's pretty proud of this one.
You know, a lot of people, Roy, have the impression that you may know that oak trees grow very slowly. Green oak, evergreen. But I planted this tree when I was in 4-H club in elementary school, and as you can see, it's grown pretty well. All right.
Another of Greg's pleasures is to climb into his old pickup truck and just drive around his property, checking on his young trees and deciding where to plant next.
If I really had my way, I'd like to see almost all the sugar cane gone, if not all, and everybody planting trees. I'm hoping that what I do in that way affects people and has them plant trees. I don't know. I'd like to see the Cajun culture continue to hold some character of its own, all aspects of it, the close family ties, and I'd like to see the Atchafalaya Basin made into a national park.
Greg's photographs remind us of the great logging operations that stripped this country of its great trees, and his deeds, he hopes, will make others think and perhaps act, restoring the Atchafalaya Basin to at least a semblance of its past glory. No visit to Louisiana's Atchafalaya River Basin would be complete without a tour. That's why I showed up at McGee's Landing. My tour guide was Curtis Allemond, who ought to be qualified. He was born on a houseboat on this very swamp. The swamp tour is one of the most popular tourist attractions around here.
The most interesting thing about it that they like so much is we narrate this tour. We tell them about the history of the basin, people's culture, like our ancestors before us that made their living here.
The truth is they still make their living here. No, not fishing and hunting. But McGee's Landing has several large tour boats, and they stay busy.
Les chenards s'en viennent au monde, ça a tout été fouillé au bord par la compagnie à Texico.
It's only natural that Cajuns would attract French-speaking people from all over the world, but it's more than the common language. Cajun hospitality is legendary, so when folks come for a visit, they feel like they belong.
Well, we tried to make them feel at home to start with. They're all strangers, and it makes them feel good when you're really nice to them. To us out here, a stranger is a friend you haven't met yet.
But friend or stranger to the swamp, no matter how many times you've seen it, there's still plenty of reason to return.
Every trip is a different trip, because you get to see things that you hadn't seen the trip before. Yeah, Atchafalaya Basin is a home for a lot of different animals.
As Curtis showed me his beautiful swamp, I could see the pride in his face, and although he'd told me he'd lived other places, I knew that this was his favorite.
It's like everything else. They always say there's no place like home.
Yes, indeed, I agree, especially when that home is in the Atchafalaya Basin of South Louisiana. The Cajun people have always lived off the land. The Cajun dictionary describes land as the space between areas of water. So, naturally, fishing's the thing to do. You fish for crab, you fish for crawfish, and, of course, you fish for fish. Cajuns fish for fun, but some still make their living at it. Bozo Verret is on his way to work. His day is spent touring the bayous and visiting the traps that only he can find deep down in the murky water.
I know where they're at, but nobody else knows where they're at.
He calls it fishing blind. You won't see any markers, but he knows where the traps are. This prevents unauthorized fish recovery or fish rustling.
Well, you got to fish blind today because they got too many people in the woods stealing your stuff. So you got to try to fish blind so they don't find them.
A grappling hook brings the trap to the surface. He uses the hoop traps that are so popular around here. The nets are held open by steel hoops, and there's a hole in the end for the fish to get in. They won't get out till he lets them out, in the boat. He'll repeat the process many a time. It's back-breaking, sloppy, slimy work to be a commercial fisherman. But what a fabulous office to work in.
Oh, yeah, I really enjoy to be out in the swamp. Yes, sir. It's a beautiful view, and it is hard. It is hard to catch them, but it's a lot of fun, too, when you're catching fish, you know.
It must be gratifying to get in that boat and go catch fish as your ancestors have all done. Even a drylander would learn to love this life. But Bozo and many of his neighbors have taken jobs in town just to make ends meet. Most of them still keep in a hand at commercial fishing. It keeps them in touch with the life that sustained their forefathers, feeding and clothing them the Cajun way. Roy Blanchard also makes his living out here. He goes to work sort of like we do, taking the main road until he has to turn onto a narrower one, and in this case, the shallower one. Roy works in the Red-Eye Swamp. He's fishing for crawfish, or, as the locals call them, mudbugs.
And out here, You don't have no special place to fish, you know. You can fish anywhere you want. First come, first serve.
Roy's been fishing this run, as he calls his trap line, for several years now. He built it himself, cutting through roots and deepening the channel, often using the outboard motor as a combination plow and chainsaw. It's a job that's never finished.
You gotta know what your motor can take, what your boat can do. It gets rough out there, you know, for fighting that swamp, but it's just one of them things. You gotta take it easy. Don't get excited. Just take your time, and you'll get by.
Just navigating this swamp is tough enough, but then he's got to empty the traps and rebait them, and there's a lot of them.
You got to work harder than on the job, you know, because sometimes, you know, you be fishing, hardly doing nothing. You get all disgusted. You got to keep fishing, you know.
Why would a man want to work in such a place?
I make a good living at it, and it's out there in the wild where I like to be, you know. It's so peaceful out there, and nobody's bothering you. You by yourself. You can think all your problems and forget about them, you know.
That's the philosophy that's kept the Cajun way of life alive. A sense of humor, a love for nature, and the ability to find the positive side of anything, even turning the lowly mud bug into a delicacy.
That's choice, that.
When most of us think of Cajun food, we think of crawfish, but there's a lot more to it than that. At Robin's restaurant near Henderson, Louisiana, you'll find as many locals eating as you will tourists, and proprietor Lionel Robin practices the manly art of cooking Cajun.
It started out at the camps, you know, the guys go either deer hunting, rabbit hunting, fishing, deer camps, and the guys just got to cooking at the camp, and it just got involved, and then the guys got involved with cooking in the restaurants as well.
Now, Robin doesn't do all the cooking here, but these ladies do stick to his recipes.
Cajuns take onions, salt and pepper, a little bit of cooking oil and flour, and you can do anything you want.
Now, if I've whetted your appetite, you don't have to head for Louisiana to get a meal. Robin's restaurant will ship it fresh, frozen, anywhere in the country. How's that for Cajun ingenuity? The same ingenuity that allowed them to survive in a land rejected by most folks. A land at first thought useless, unfit for human habitation. But the Cajuns made it their home, living with the land, not even trying to conquer it. A harmony that's found in their lifestyle, their music, their food, their joy of life. Most nights in Cajun, Louisiana, all you gotta do is stop and listen for a minute, and you'll hear music. Probably laughter, too. Seek out the source, and you'll see dancing. Young and old alike, the whole family. Folks like 78-year-old Father John Millette, who has his own reasons for being there.
Exercise, and I love to show people how to dance.
While this may be Father John's favorite place to cut a rug, you don't have to go to a nightclub to hear Cajun music.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are y'all?
All right.
Come on in, gentlemen.
Ever since the 60s, it's happened this way. Folks gather on Saturday morning at the Savoy Music Center just outside Eunice, Louisiana. Mark Savoy greets them. It's a jam session, a Cajun jam session.
It started off, on a very low-key. 4 or 5 people would come, and we'd conduct business, and we'd play a few tunes, and some of the neighbors would come to listen to the tunes that was being played.
The custom goes way back to a time when folks would gather at the local merchants each Saturday morning to pay bills and swap stories. But this is a music store, so it's only natural that Mark would invite his neighbors to bring their instruments and refreshments.
And I always tried to keep the jam session very informal.
Primarily, Mark wants to preserve the old songs and traditional music. That's why he encourages folks of all ages to come and participate. A byproduct of Cajun music is the fact that you can't stand still and listen to it. It's inevitable that the tapping of a toe will turn into a dance. Some dance the traditional, while others jazz it up a little. But if you want to know what the Cajun expression joie de vivre really means, stop by the Savoy Music Center any Saturday morning. You'll see. Only in South Louisiana will you hear Cajun French spoken on the radio. The music's Cajun, the commercials are Cajun, and the DJ's Cajun. His name's Fred Charlie.
Well, this has been a lifelong dream of mine. When I was a kid growing up in the country about 15 miles from here, I used to dream about being a radio DJ.
And in '87, Fred's dream came true. He jumped at the chance to have his very own radio show, never dreaming how well it would be received.
We've had people call us and said our kids have turned off the TV and not watching cartoons on Saturday mornings, but listening to your show. So hopefully we're doing something right to help preserve the culture.
It's a request show, and the phone never stops ringing. So Fred has enlisted the help of his wife, Dolores, and she's got it under control.
We probably have somewhere around 5,000 cuts. My wife's got a real good system. We can find it real quick. It's not always played that quick, because once we have a stack of requests, it takes a while to bring them down. The Fred Charlie Cajun Show, KBAZ.
So Fred Charlie's dream came true. He got his own radio show. The folks of Cajun, Louisiana got their French language radio show, and everybody got a boost in their Cajun pride. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it, but we're plumb out of time. Until next time, bye.